it's also something that is heartwarming because I worked for it over a long period of time. Climbing up the ladder, I started out as a state president of the Medical Women's Association of Nigeria, which is one of our over 90 branches. And in Nigeria, we currently have over 30 state branches. And then 10 years later, I became the national president for the Nigerian Association. I then served on all the international committees before vying in elections in Vienna, Austria in 2016. I didn't win those elections.
This was your first attempt on it?
On my first attempt.
Yeah.
And thankfully, by the time I prayerfully, persistently persevered and pursued, I got into the position of president-elect as we celebrated our 100-year anniversary, our centennial in New York in 2019. And by December of 2019, I came into the position of international president.
And it is the international slants to what the association you're heading,
yes,
that you're on diplomatic ties today. So the question now is, how are you using this association to galvanize ties among nations of the world from the medical angle?
The fact that we are a membership and professional organization made up of female doctors and dentists from the over 90 countries, we are bound naturally by our professional ties. We cover the full spectrum of the medical the medical branches and professions and specialties. We are bound by priority issues. So the first thing we're looking at would be women's global health. We are inward facing because our founding mothers, who came together in 1919, had peculiar problems within the profession. There were so few of them that they had to band together to address their common issues. So inwardly, we're looking at issues of mentoring. We're looking at issues of encouraging our members to take leadership positions. And then we are outward facing in the sense that we are looking at health of men, women, boys and girls, but prioritizing the health of women and girls.
But you have a space for the other gender, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. A lot will be imagining me having a sheet of paper today on the program. I have some 4 key areas I want to quote you copiously in the course of the program. First, when the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, hosted you on arrival in Nigeria after your induction or investiture as the President of the Medical Women's International Association, one of the things you said, you commended the efforts of the federal government, being made by the federal government to protect Nigerians from the COVID-19.
Yes.
You said that, quoting you, our prayer is that the same way we set a good example in the handling of Ebola, that we will also overcome and contain the coronavirus.
Yes.
Can you expatiate?
Quite simply, the coronavirus, COVID-19, is a novel virus. We are learning as we go along. Every nation on earth was more or less caught napping regarding the virus. It is a war nobody chose to fight. But within that war, there we have discovered that there are battles. When I made that statement, and I really want to appreciate Mr. President for welcoming me, applauding me, and celebrating me alongside the Minister for Women's Affairs who presented me to Mr. President. I would like to applaud that because we should celebrate our own. We need to dispel that myth about prophets not being known in their, homes. But going back to your question, as I said, COVID-19 is a war with several battles. We have not gone down this path before. Having said that, Nigeria has gone down a similar path. That similar path was in containing Ebola. And I said it as a prayer. At the time when I visited Mr. President, the first case of COVID-19 had not been discovered, the lockdown had not commenced, and it was a prayer that Nigeria would use her resources and lessons learned for dealing with the Ebola outbreak in dealing in a similar way with COVID-19.
Okay. In line with your reaction,
yes,
what advice do you have for Nigeria who at this time, as we speak, sees coronavirus, see COVID-19 advocacy, protocol, guidelines as just a joke?
You see, as first of all, wearing the hat of leadership of International President of the Medical Women's International Association, let's start from global to local. At a global level, the very first thing we did was I made a rallying call like a general would do to her troops, to our frontline healthcare professionals, whom several studies have clearly stated are female, our doctors, nurses, other allied staff who have been the frontline workers for battling the coronavirus. So the first thing was to make a rallying call to my members, to tell them that the things that they've been doing in their day jobs, they need to step up with more dedication and more hope, giving them hope that despite all the challenges, there would be a rainbow at the end of this. That was the first thing. And there's a video that is titled "To Our Heroic Healthcare Personnel." The other thing that was important to let our members know was that they're not alone. We had issues in the global north before they came to the global south. Would you believe that we had associations in the global south donating to help our colleagues in the global north? Something that's usually the other way around. We also sent out the message of self-care because the global report was that our members were wilting, getting tired. We even heard of the case of the lady a female doctor who committed suicide. And so there was a message regarding self-care. So whilst you are caring for members of the public, remember to care for yourself. And then what did we do for the public that we serve. Let me come local now. The Medical Women's Association of Nigeria has an incredible campaign called the Worthy Campaign. Worthy is spelled W-O-R-T-H-I. The acronym stands for Women's Right to Health Information. What we have done, which we ramped up in response to COVID, is we use women as an entry point. Why women? Women are the bearers, the rearers, the carers in our homesteads. They make those decisions as to, this person isn't looking too well today. What is the first line of action? So we break down health information through the Worthy Campaign, women's rights to health information. Instead of using highfalutin medical words, we use everyday words to bring that knowledge through women so that they can take the best decisions for themselves and for their families.
The other thing you spoke to,
Yes.
you said the association has not only honored Nigeria, but talking about MWIA now.
Yes.
But also aligned with the president's administration, that President Buhari's administration, in stepping up to the next level.
Yes.
How do you mean?
Very clear, and I've said it before, the fact that this administration decided to take time through the Minister of Women's Affairs and Mr. President to applaud one of their own, and a woman in particular, for me, meant a lot. Having said that, it also is important to state that a lot more can be done. When you are going to next levels, it's important on the way to celebrate each milestone and celebrate each small victory on your way to the larger victory. I would like to see more women in leadership in Nigeria, women who are competent, women who know their onions, and women who can compete favorably with the men. I've said it before, and it's out there in the public space. In the response to COVID-19, we have a presidential task force. Let's get more women in the presidential task force. One of the big elephants in the room right now, and nobody can say in Nigeria that they do not know what's going on. Something that I'm very angry about as an expert in violence against women and girls.
We'll come to that. Listen to the name of the International Association.
Yes.
Are you strictly for women? You don't even have a space for the male folk?
Goodness gracious me. We are a professional organization. We are a membership organization. We are an organization set aside for female doctors, or physicians if you want to use that word, and dentists. If you go back in history to when this association was formed in 1919, that was around when we had the Spanish flu.
Sure.
You will find out that the Medical Women's International Association is the longest existing medical association in the world. And let me tell you something. Whilst we were in New York, at the United Nations, we had the opportunity to listen to the grandson of my namesake, Eleanor Roosevelt. And her grandson, Michael, was asked, "What would your grandmother say if she was around today?" Do you know what his answer was concerning women in medicine? That Eleanor Roosevelt will say, "You mean in 100 years not much has changed?" So we are looking for our women as vice chancellors. We want our women to be chief medical directors. We want our women, because they have, just like the men, they have the competence, they have the skills, they have the knowledge to be in those same positions. So even though things have changed, we have more females in the medical profession. When you look at the top management level, there are still very few women.
Okay, let's go to the big one that you said you are very angry about.
Oh,
So much advocacy, sustained, back end, front line, front burner every other day, as much as we even have a special day for it. What's your comments? Not all the time, but briefly on it.
I'm really angry at the level of sexual violence that is going on right now in Nigeria. We need to declare a state of emergency because there is an emergency. Yes, we are going through the viral pandemic, but there's another pandemic within the pandemic. There is an intersecting pandemic. How is it that we have had lockdown, locked in, locked within, and you have women and girls who have been locked in spaces with perpetrators of sexual violence? I read another one, the case of young Uwa. Her mother told us of what a bright girl she was. She went into a place that is normally a safe space just to read, to improve on her education. We don't know the circumstances, whether there was no light or that it was quiet. Whatever the circumstance, she was sexually violated and murdered. Just yesterday, I heard another case of a wife of a politician, again in Edo State, in her own home. If we do not declare a state of emergency, if we do not get the highest of those in power condemning in every way, these are our men who have wives, sisters, daughters. And unfortunately, there's a culture of silence and there's a culture of impunity. And unless and until we declare a state of emergency and we declare zero tolerance, and then we need to have quick dispensation of justice. All those who are responsible for responding to cases of violence, and more so sexual violence, from our executive to the National Assembly to the judiciary, every single person walking in our communities should stand up and condemn it. And preventive education. How are we educating our children, young boys, young girls, young boys to respect? We need to remove the normalization of violence. a situation where culturally young girls are being raped in the name of early marriage. When you marry a child of 8 or 9, that is rape.
Okay, talking about looking at consent, I got to listen to somebody talk about the fact that it's not only the women who are being violated, but
Yes.
the men are also violated. What do you say about this?
Oh, no, thank you for raising that. Our young boys also are being sexually violated. And that's why I say when we come to prevention education, the first place of education is in the home. How are we raising our boys and girls? What are the positive masculinities to make boys believe in themselves in a way that they can contribute meaningfully to the society, as opposed to parents urging boys on with negative masculinities, giving them the impression that, oh, that they have won something if they go out and violate a girl. Let's protect our boys. Let's protect our girls. Let's teach mutual respect to our boys, teach mutual respect to our girls. If we are talking about virginity to our girls, talk about virginity to our boys. That respect of the human dignity is what we need to bring back into our cultures.
We are in the 25th year of post-Beijing.
Oh, yes, indeed.
And in looking at 2050 of post-Beijing, a lot, looking at the program of the UN Women, they are saying a lot.
Yeah.
Being in development world, you are aware of this.
Yes.
Now, they have come up with 12 critical areas
Yes.
of concern, and one of it is women in health.
Yes.
Looking at this and also looking at what your association is doing,
Yeah.
how do you interface it, and do you think you get somewhere so soon before we wrap up?
No, we are inextricably linked with what the United Nations is doing through the Sustainable Development Goals. Beijing is hugely important to us. In fact, I say of China that we have the tale of two cities, just like Charles Dickens, the title of Charles Dickens's book, that we have Beijing where women's rights, was really amplified, and we have Wuhan where the first reports of this virus broke out, both in China. But having said that, Beijing 25 years later, what can we do 25 years going forward so that we will not say, like my namesake Eleanor Roosevelt, what really has changed? It is, what we need is a whole of government and a whole of society.
Welcome to TZ Live. I am Omini Odan. Nigerians are still basking in the euphoria of the 2020 Democracy Day observed few days ago, even though without celebrations because of guidelines with the COVID-19. There seems to be a high level of excitement as the citizens look forward to more gains. Democracy has evolved over the years with more recorded gains, especially in the last 5 years. From infrastructural development to growing the economy, fighting corruption and insecurity, the story is that of positive turnaround in advancing democratic strides in Nigeria. The records, many say, speak volumes, particularly with the social investment programs that has continued to be a model to other nations with thousands of beneficiaries across the country. More feats also recorded in the agricultural sector and interventions to cushion the impact of COVID-19 while stabilizing the economy and saving jobs. Tonight, the focus is on democracy and national development as we look at the milestone achievements, challenges, and prospects. How robust is the social contract and strategies in consolidating the democratic strides? Answers and more with reports on Vox Pop across the country. But first, this report put together by Jide Onifade.
It is 1 year now that President Muhammadu Buhari, at the Made in June 12 Democracy Day, promised to frontally address the nation's daunting challenges, especially insecurity, the economy, and corruption. On this day of another celebration of democracy in the country, the president is here giving account of those promises he made.
We have recorded notable achievements in the course of implementing our 9 priority objectives. Government has continued to implement accountability and transparent policies through the Open Government Partnership and the Transparency Portal on financial transactions. Similarly, we have strengthened auditing and accountability mechanisms so as to ensure that rules and regulations are followed strictly. Anti-corruption agencies have secured more than 1,400 convictions and also recovered funds in excess of 800 billion naira. These monies are being plowed into development and infrastructure projects.
We are establishing a solid foundation for future success, the president says, stressing that the objectives of his administration have remained to stabilize the macroeconomy, achieve agricultural and food security, ensure energy sufficiency in power and petroleum products, and develop infrastructure, as well as fight corruption and improve governance.
Our efforts on growing non-oil exports have started to yield some results. For instance, in the first year, our revenue from cocoa and sesame seed increased by $79.4 million United States dollars and $153 million United States dollars.
The president is elated that work has commenced on his directive on the employment of 774,000 Nigerian youths. As the president explains, these youths will be engaged in special public works program aimed at cushioning the effect of economic downturn. On COVID-19 pandemic, President Buhari says he is confident that the steps being taken by the presidential task force would result in flattening the curve, while imploring investors, researchers, and scientists to come up with solutions to cure COVID-19. The president says government is determined to turn the challenge to motivation by building a nationwide public health care system that will take care of present and any future outbreak.
Humanity and indeed democracy is under the threat of COVID-19. Nigeria has survived many crises before and came out stronger. I am confident that by God's grace, we shall overcome this one and emerge stronger and more purposeful.
The president also dedicates most part of his broadcast to the nation's National Assembly for their cooperation, the youth population, women, and people living with disabilities, as well as the media, and not forgetting the military and other security agencies.
I salute your courage, enterprise, and resilience as well as your contributions to national development.
President Muhammadu Buhari promises to uphold the Constitution and protect the lives and property of all Nigerians, stressing that his administration would focus on ensuring that the rule of law prevails. In the State House, Jide Onifade.
Jide Onifade's report set the tone for the takeoff of the program tonight, which is democracy and national development in Nigeria. In the course of the program, we shall take phone calls when the phone number is displayed on the screen. Please, if we are true to you, please turn down the volume of your television set and to avoid the echo, and raise your concerns, raise your questions, go straight to the point. Also, you can be part of the conversation tonight through our Twitter handle at Tuesday Live NTA. In the course of the program, we shall be dotting the landscape of the country with reports on what you call the dividend of democracy within the space of 5 years of this administration. Quickly, my guests tonight I have with me in the studio, Ranking Senator Kabiru Gaya, is Chairman, Senate Committee on INEC, and also former Governor of Kano State. Good to have you on the program tonight.
Thank you, and good evening, Nigerians. I'm glad to be here on this program.
Also tonight, I have the Managing Director in National Inland Waterways Authority, NIWA, and former National Auditor of the All Progressives Congress, George Mogalo. Welcome to the program.
Good evening, and thank you.
I'll be doing Medugri in the course of the program, and we expect yet another guest in the course of the program. Well, gentlemen, let's begin. Democracy and national development. Also tonight, we have the Minister of State for Health, Senator Olurimi Mamora. Good to have you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, let's begin. Well, we're looking at democracy. I know there's a common definition of democracy, but when, just like they will say, what you hear in the classroom is not what you see on the field. We have heard the popular definition of democracy, but if you have tested it, being a former governor, ranking senator, can you give us in perspective democracy as it is since 1999 to date, and what you see it to be currently?
Well, first of all, democracy is a government whereby everybody is being involved into the running of the administration. That means people select the representatives, starting from councillor to local government chairman, to House of Rep member, to governors, senators, House of Rep, and even the president. So these are the people who have been elected representing their own community, which means in democracy you involve virtually everybody into the running of the administration of that government. It's unlike the military. The persons are posted to your state from different states of the country, not equal, not the same from your state. They will post you somebody there, and he's going to govern as a new person without knowing much of the problems of that society. But when a person is elected under these democratic norms, he is representing the people in that community or in the whole as a country for a president. Therefore, you work with them, you listen to them, you get the advisors, and then you implement promises which you did during the campaign. So there is a completely difference between a military rule and a democratic government. And it's a democratic government that have check and balances, because if you didn't perform, you won't come back after 4 years. But for military, you are just posted, you can be there for a month, or you can be there for 4 years, 3 to 4 years, and so on. But democracy is, we as leaders under democratic government, we listen to the yearnings of Nigerians or our electorates. And when we go home, sit with them, they tell us their problems, whether it is local one or state problem or national problem. We listen to them and we come to the floor of the Senate and then talk on those issues. And which one we do, and most of our senators, if they agree, it means that becomes a major change into the development of Nigeria. And that is completely a different scenario than the military rule. So therefore, Nigeria is just growing now. We just about 20 years uninterrupted of democratic government, and we are able to achieve transfer of power from a ruling government, which is democratic, to an opposition party that wins the election, and it was peaceful. So it means Nigeria, we are making progress, but that progress we are making is because of the the commitment and the support of Nigerians in the rule of this administration. So in a nutshell, it is that the government is for the people, by the people. So this is how we define this governance. And I believe for those who perform, people can come back and re-elect them. And for those who didn't do well, they are booted out of the office. So I believe this system should really be enhanced and encouraged in such a way that we maintain democracy throughout the life of this of the country, because U.S. United States of America is over 200 years of democracy. In Nigeria, we're only talking about 20 years, but yet the people are feeling the effect of the governance. Where they feel good, they mention it, and where they feel a little bit worried and concerned, they now raise those issues, and the government listen to those problems and try to solve those issues raised by our people. So therefore, today we are celebrating, some days ago we celebrated the Democracy Day, which I'm very happy and delighted that President Buhari recognizes the June 12, which I was a governor at that time, and in particular NRC governor, which was not SDP, I was NRC governor. But I really appreciated how President Buhari came back and reintroduced this issue of June 12. At least it gives those who were supporting Abiola a kind of consolation that yes, you have worked hard.
Senator Guy, let me just hold you there and also get the perspective of Senator Mamora, Minister of State for Health, thereafter Moghalu. Senator Mamora, what's your perspective? We just heard Kabiru Gaya's perspective. Can we take your perspective?
Thank you very much. Well, democracy, there is what I would call the universal definition, or the most popular definition of democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the central thing there is people. So what it then means is that democracy is people-centered, or it ought to be people-centered. So whichever level you are considering it, whether at the local, at the state, or at the federal, as we have in our own situation, you are looking at the people. And of course, you also have the three arms in a democracy: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So, whichever way you look at it, it provides for election, particularly at the level of the legislature and the executive. In our own situation, you don't have election into the judiciary. And the goal of democracy is good governance. Democracy is not a destination. We need to get that clear. It is not a destination, rather it's a process. And it keeps refining itself. That is, it undergoes a process of refining. You make mistakes, you get over. You make mistakes, you get over, you correct, and that's just the way it is. And you also have certain ingredients that are important in a democracy. One of such ingredients is a constitution, people's constitution. Yes, some will argue that yes, it's not in all situations, not in all climes that you have a constitution. Like Britain. Britain does not have a constitution, but then it's still a democracy. Then, second thing in a democracy is free press. It's very critical in a democracy. The third thing is a judiciary that is fearless, because you cannot be talking of a rule of law without a fearless judiciary in place. The fourth thing is orderly succession through a free, fair, and credible electoral process. I repeat, electoral process. It's not just election. Electoral process comprises of the pre-election, intra-election, and post-election. A situation where you have an election and 2, 3, 4 years after you are still in court definitely is not the best. The other thing, probably the fifth, is fundamental human rights. Human rights must be sustained in a democracy. So these are some of the pillars, if you like, or the ingredients that must be there when you talk of democracy. That's why some people will argue that there are situations where you have a country that at best is in civil rule, but not in democracy. But in all this, it's a process, like I said. You keep on, refining it. You keep on having things that you may need to change. America, that has been at it for over 200 years, they're still having issues. Look at what has happened in recent times in respect of management of this COVID-19 pandemic, where there were some issues between President Trump and some of the governors in some of the states in America. One would have thought that that ordinarily shouldn't, arise after being at it for over 200 years. But then, that tells you that's a confirmation that it is not a destination but a process. But you keep on working at it, and it becomes self-refining, and you work at it, as much as possible. And of course, don't forget that what defines democracy is the legislature. That's why when you talk of the three arms of government being coordinate, that is, equal in ranking, you still have to remember that you still have first among equal, and that is the legislature. Because remove the legislature, then you have autocracy. You no longer have democracy. So far, so good for us, in my own assessment. We have done reasonably well, and we have cause to celebrate at this point in time.
Your perspective on democracy, but let's look at this way. From the two reactions, Kabiru Yugaya and Senator Mamora, it's an evolving process, no destination. Even the United States that has hit 200 years plus, it is still evolving. Now, within the period we have had unbroken democracy, looking at the way institutions have moved, checks and balances, what's your take?
My two colleagues who have spoken on this issue of democracy had done justice to the definition and the process. Most importantly, let me emphasize that, like you also said, that democracy is a process. As a nation, we've done reasonably well because when Senator Kabiru Yugaya was speaking, he reminded us that we have had 20 years of uninterrupted democratic process. When you realize that before we got here, that there was a place where we were before, and our experience then as a nation cannot be compared to what we have today. So for me, we've done reasonably well, but like I will always say, it's a process. We will keep improving until we get there. When Senator Mamora was speaking, he also reminded us that despite the fact that America has been in this business for over 200 years, they still have challenges that come up on a daily basis. Because the important thing here is, in defining democracy, you talk about the people. It's about people. And because it's about people, we are all living beings, and people have to be managed. attitudes change, opinions change, various idiosyncrasies. So the truth here remains that since the people are involved, the process will continue evolving until we get to a point where we can say we've done reasonably well. We've done reasonably well, while at the same time hoping to continue improving. But for me, I believe that this process is a continuous one that is not going to stop. There's no point we'll get and we said, okay, we've reached the terminal point of our democratic experiment. So it's a continuous process. But so far, so good, we've done well as a nation. And my prayer is that we continue on this trajectory. We're certainly going to get to our required destination.
Joining us from Maiduguri Network Center, Bulama Mali Gubio, Secretary Spokesman, Borno Elders Forum. Good to have you on the program tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. You're welcome.
And when you say democracy, it cuts across the tiers of government, the levels of government. From your end, 5 years on, what's your assessment?
Thank you very much. Democracy has already been defined. Has already been defined by my colleagues in the studio there. In Nigeria, we love democracy, but we lack Democrats. They define democracy without defining Democrats. If you want to succeed in a democracy, you must have Democrats. And most of our Nigerian politicians lack the quality of being good Democrats. Intolerance and vendetta are not in the same family with democracy. For the last 20 years, our democracy survived because Nigerians are peace-loving people, not because our politicians are Democrats. We are very resilient people, very tolerant people. We respect our leaders. We obey their orders. Under all circumstances, we survive and we prevail. In a situation where you find Democrats who do not win elections go back and sponsor violence, disunity, just because they are not in power, that does not talk much about good democracy. In a suitable and sustainable democracy, you contest, you lose, and then look forward to the next election while supporting your colleagues who won the elections. In Nigeria, this is not the situation. You can see that in the last 20 years, violence has been all over this country. It has been multiplying, particularly in the part of the country where I live. For the last 11 years, we have been living under very serious insurgency. It has now spread all over the country. And despite the fact that we are lucky to have sustained our democracy for 20 years, the masses are not comfortable where they are because they are not in peace. They cannot pursue their normal life in peace and tranquility. And what I understand about democracy is that the leaders should give people peace, security, progress. We should continue to make progress from where we are and go on and on and on until we become absolutely developed country. But it looks like we are taking some steps forward and more steps backward because of the insecurity and unemployment. So we are lucky. We have our democracy. We love our democracy, developed our democracy, and we are indeed serious about it. We congratulate our leaders, our president, the National Assembly, our governors, everybody that we are able to put our heads together and sustain our democracy to this level. Let me plead with fellow Nigerians that intolerance, vendetta should be out of this system if we as Nigerians want to develop our democracy to higher levels. Because from what I know, everybody who loses election, 90% of them go to tribunals, to courts, and then when they lose completely, they go from behind the scene and sponsor things that will disturb the polity. And that is not good. If you destroy what others build, the same thing will be done to you when it is time for you to build your own. That is if you can ever be able to build one. Because we have a country to protect, we have a country to develop, we have a country to live in. And some people, when the president took over, I vividly remember he said he was going to fight corruption. But he said corruption will fight back. Corruption is fighting back not by stealing. Stealing is no more there because of the way things are going. But then the corrupt people who will want to entrench their system of governance are sponsoring violence all over the country under various names, various guises, and nobody is safe. Our roads are not safe. Our villages are not safe. Even the food stuff we eat in the markets are not safe because they are polluted by people who feel that this country should not stay in peace. So if we want to develop our democracy, we have to all put our heads together, remove the evil deeds in our hearts, and then join our hands together and develop our country, because this is the only country we have.
Has given us quite an interesting opening there from Kabiru Gaya and the other guests across the country. This tone has been set. Now, we told you at the beginning of the program that we would take reports across the country to sustain the conversation. When we return, go to specific issues based on the general statement made by our guest. Our first report tonight is on the gains in power.
From the small, medium and large-scale enterprises, as well as to domestic needs, it is the quality of electricity supply that makes the difference in achieving the desired economic growth and development.
The light is better than before.
Like other sectors with activities, electricity is delivered with all its value chain of gas, generation, transmission and distribution, working seamlessly as well as stakeholders through teamwork to deliver on mandates.
Our next level movement in this power sector is to make sure that all these projects have been completed. We are going around to complete the project and also to commission the project before the end of this term.
To ensure diversification of energy sources, the long-standing dispute which kept Mambila Power Project on the drawing board has been resolved to deliver life-changing power infrastructure and huge employment opportunities.
This just signifies the fact that we are marching words with action.
Similarly, Kashimbila and Dadinkowa hydropower projects are awaiting inauguration as work on Zungeru project is progressing. In the larger context, the Buhari administration made commitment amounted to 1.3 trillion naira since it came on board to address revenue shortfall and ensure payments are made to gas suppliers as at when due. Similarly, government also introduced the Willing Buyer, Willing Seller initiative designed to enable consumers to take electricity supply directly from generation companies to their homes and businesses. Working through the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, the issue of meter access to customers received attention with orders to distribution companies to ensure availability.
In an audience participatory program, let's take this vox pop by Nigerians from Ibadan.
We in Oyo State are happy with what is going on with Lagos-Ibadan Road. It's a major since Buhari took over, because since Buhari took over, there's a clear evidence that he really meant business. And he has promised us by 2021, 2022, the road will be completed. It's a sad reflection of pure leadership. I'm also happy to say that Buhari's pragmatic approach to Lagos, Oyo Ogumasho Road, which is nearing completion, is a major achievement in the area of...
So we have to give kudos to President Buhari, for seeing it, deeming it necessary that June 12 should not be wished away, because it was the day that Nigerians spoke with one voice.
So by making June 12 Democracy Day, it shows that our struggles to bring about democracy or to install them is never in vain.
can always have your say on Tuesday Live. Let's go to Enugu. What are Nigerians saying?
Niger Bridge is working on the rehabilitation of some routes. The rehabilitation of our airport, international airport at Enugu, is another credit to him.
That second Niger Bridge is very, very important to the economy of this region and even the South and other parts of Nigeria.
Sadly, Mr. President has exceeded all expectations in Southeast Zone. The transformation that is going on now at the moment, Enugu International Airport, are nearly to completion.
Multi-million rail transport from Kano to Lagos is on stream right away. The light rail, the one they call light rail, within Abuja metropolis is also on track. That has not been in place since the history of this great country. It's a very good milestone in the area of transport to facilitate and make transport very easy in this very country.
For staying tuned, our focus once again is democracy and national development tonight. Well, in the opening, the tone was set, and let's go to specifics. From Maiduguri, Gubius talked about democracy, Democrats, intolerance, vendetta, but we say, if our democracy is evolving, how do we walk away from issues like this? Before we go to the tweets.
Yeah, but first of all, I appreciate his comment in talking that Democrats and democracy. It's the Democrats that makes a good democracy, and that makes it a good governance. I don't agree with him in the fact that we do not have Democrats. We have Democrats because the Democrats are the ones running the system. I appreciate President Buhari was a military general, and he transformed to a Democrat, excellent Democrat, because he decided to complete the project that he made on track.